Welcome to Edinburgh, where politics is far more gripping than anything going on in Westminster. In the last half hour, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives has demanded the resignation of the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. In a statement, Douglas Ross claimed there was no doubt she had misled the Scottish Parliament and broken the ministerial code. Earlier, the Scottish Government was forced to hand over legal advice to a committee looking into the handling of sexual harassment complaints against the former First Minister, Alex Salmond. They had refused for months to release this legal advice, defying 2 parliamentary votes that demanded it be handed over. After the threat of a no-confidence vote, the Scottish Government conceded. Aisha Tull reports.
The Scottish Government bowed to pressure. It's handed over 67 pages of legal advice that was given to them in 2018 after Alex Salmond started proceedings over the way internal harassment complaints against him had been investigated. But that's not the only evidence released today. Duncan Hamilton, Alex Salmond's legal advisor, confirms in a letter to the committee that he was aware of a meeting between the First Minister and Alex Salmond's former Chief of Staff on the 29th of March for the purpose of discussing the complaints. Nicola Sturgeon said she learnt of the complaints 3 days later. Back to the legal advice. The Scottish Parliament voted twice to give this information over. They were denied twice.
The failure of the government to comply with the will of Parliament is deeply disrespectful to the institution.
It wasn't until the threat of a motion of no confidence against the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, that there was movement on this. He now says because of the exceptional circumstances, he would release the papers. The Conservatives say they won't remove the vote of no confidence until they see how much has been given over. Taking a step back, this is the latest in an ongoing battle between Alex Salmond, the SNP, and Nicola Sturgeon. In January 2018, 2 female staff members made formal complaints to the Scottish Government about Alex Salmond's conduct, and they opened an investigation. A year later, a court ruled that the government's investigation was unlawful and tainted by apparent bias. Then they had to pay over £500,000.
While I'm glad about the victory which has been achieved today, I'm sad that it was necessary.
That brings us back to today and the Holyrood inquiry looking into why the investigation was mishandled. The committee wants to see the legal guidance in full given before the failed court case. Last week, Mr Salmond claimed the Scottish Government knew they were going to lose because of the legal advice they were given beforehand.
As a former First Minister, would carrying on legal action in the Court of Session, knowing that you had acted unlawfully, be a breach of the ministerial code?
Yes.
The letter written to the committee this evening by the Deputy First Minister disputes that. He said the Scottish Government did not ignore legal advice in continuing to defend the case, which would have been a breach of the ministerial code. The serious allegations being levelled at the Scottish Government cannot be underestimated. The fact they're being largely made by Alex Salmond against his former protégé make it even more damning and politically dramatic. As current leader, Nicola Sturgeon will have to give answers. With the election just weeks away, she can't afford to put a foot wrong, as her reputation, her party and the independence dream she holds so dear are on the line.
Well, with me now is the MSP Jackie Baillie, who's Deputy Leader of the Scottish Labour Party and a member of the inquiry committee. This is the strongest possible language the Scottish Conservatives could be throwing at Nicola Sturgeon now, saying that she lied to Parliament and that they are going to call a vote of no confidence in her. Do you agree that she lied to Parliament, and will you join the vote of no confidence?
Well, Nicola Sturgeon appears before the committee tomorrow morning. I certainly want to put questions to her, and we will make a decision after we've heard from her as to whether we would join a vote of no confidence. I think it is too early. I think we do need to hear from the First Minister tomorrow.
So Douglas Ross has gone too soon, because he's claiming that there are now reliable witnesses to contradict what the First Minister told you in the Parliament this week. That not to her knowledge had the name of a complainant been passed by her team.
There are indeed witness evidence that's come in this evening that suggests that Nicola Sturgeon wasn't entirely accurate with what she described to the Parliament, in the sense that the name of a complainer, which is a huge breach of confidentiality, was actually released by a close member of her team to Jeff Aberdeen, who is the former Chief of Staff to the First Minister.
Right, but what she said this week was, not to her knowledge was it handed over. So there are various possibilities
Indeed.
here. It's possible that it was handed over but she didn't know, or it's possible that the people who are claiming it was handed over are wrong and she's right.
There are indeed a number of possibilities, which is why I do want to question her tomorrow. But there are a range.
But you don't really have an open mind, do you? Because you've already attacked her on many fronts.
No, I do have an open mind. I want to get to the bottom of this. As somebody who's been in the Scottish Parliament for 22 years, I have never seen anything quite like this. And I am really disturbed at the multiple allegations of breaches of the ministerial code. And I think that the First Minister does have serious questions to answer, but I'm not going to prejudge that and tonight call for a resignation,
Are
as
all
others
breaches
have
the
done.
same?
No, they're not. I mean,
So there are some breaches of the code that would not mean you need to resign.
Look, there are several allegations of breaches, everything from, knowing about it sooner than she actually did, misleading Parliament, but actually pursuing a legal case when you know that it is unlawful. That is a very serious breach of the ministerial code and something I wouldn't expect the First Minister of the country to do.
Well, is that clear from the evidence today that she knew it was unlawful? There's a difference between legal advice saying you might lose and saying you knew it was unlawful.
Of course, but the legal advice is very clear. On the 31st of October, indeed earlier than that, but on the 31st of October, it is very clear that senior counsel thought that the case was finished. It absolutely was not going to be won in the Court of Session. They then had a meeting with the First Minister and the Permanent Secretary on the 13th of November, but there's no record of that. Certainly the committee have not been provided with it.
So do you think that's a resigning matter?
They should have conceded the case. I think it's been an extraordinary waste of public money to drag a case out that you know you're not going to win.
You're making hay in truth, aren't you?
Not at all.
This is an internal SNP row between two leaders, and you're all jumping on it and making hay ahead of the election.
Well, if it was an internal row in the SNP, I don't think you'd be standing here on a cold Edinburgh evening.
Jackie Bailey, thank you very much indeed. Let me turn now to Stephen Gethens, a former SNP MP who was a special advisor to Alex Salmond and then for Nicola Sturgeon. This has now stepped up a gear very seriously, hasn't it? If there is evidence lodged with the Parliament today that supports the claim that Nicola Sturgeon denied just a couple of days ago.
Well, you're right. I mean, this is a serious evening. But one thing that strikes me, and remember, Christian, there is an election coming up. But I'm still struck that the Conservatives have put down this motion of no confidence tonight before Nicola Sturgeon's given her evidence. Now, tomorrow's an important day. Jackie Bailey's right to talk about that. The committee members will get their opportunity to quiz Nicola Sturgeon tomorrow in the same way that they did with Alex Salmond on Friday. So I'm not sure why motions of no confidence are going down before that's taken place. I think sometimes in politics where people aren't very good at listening, maybe tomorrow we should listen to what happens in that committee.
This is boiling down, though, to he said and what she said. So how is anybody supposed to judge that if everybody sticks to their positions?
Well, it's difficult. It's clearly a complex case, and I can understand that and sympathise with people. But when you've got these complex cases, maybe sometimes we should reach the end of the evidence sessions, which is something we've not done yet. And then people are going to be able to reach their own conclusions after that. The committee members are going to have to draw up a report after that as well. I've served on committees, and one of the valuable things about committees is that cross-party basis on which this is done. But one of the things that as a committee member you shouldn't do is reach conclusions until you've heard all of the evidence. It's certainly something that I was always taught in the House of Commons.
Do you think any of the allegations against Nicola Sturgeon are resigning matters, if proven? Are any of them serious enough?
Well, look, let's see what comes out in the evidence session tomorrow. I think everybody should go in with an open mind, but let's also bear in mind that Scotland's got a really important election coming up when people will be able to make their own
we know what the
decisions
allegations are
as well
against her, and so we can say, are any of those serious enough for the First Minister to have to resign?
Well, I think you're jumping the gun a little bit here. I mean, let's see. Nicola Sturgeon's up in front of the committee tomorrow. They've got a lengthy amount of time. Let's hear what she's got to say. I'm interested in hearing what she's got to say, and I'm sure other people are as well. But fundamentally, that committee should reach its own judgment after they've heard all of the evidence. And let's not forget as well, maybe there's a bit of politics going on here with the Tories, I don't know, but we're going into a period of very important elections coming up in a few weeks' time. And I think before that happens, it's important to let the committee report back. So let's not jump to conclusions. Let's listen to the evidence. I know that sometimes a wee bit unfashionable.